Hey, Jeff.
For the fee changes.
You know,
No. The only thing, the fee schedule is to allow for public comment.
There's a problem with
Hearing, but anyway, there's only comment on 2 pages allowed, and on 216, it's not a formal public hearing.
You know, and
So we're presenting it, taking public comment.
And I told him that
You won't take action.
we should have had.
Well, I know Rob wants
Should have slowed down to 2 calls.
allow for any comment tonight.
Autocorrect
The reality, they're only.
doesn't always work.
Sewer and water costs.
Fee schedule one, eventually it should hopefully get into place, but there's no immediacy.
Yeah.
We have to do it. As I told Brad, my council prerogative, it's more time for input than they can.
The public a chance to weigh in when it comes back on other meetings.
That's what they're turn my phone off and post there.
It doesn't specifically say that, but it starts letting. And if they just see it, that's not the way to do it.
Oh, we're gonna end up getting beat up.
Is this rough?
We'll end up raising fees anyway.
That's fine.
You know, I don't agree with it myself. I get tired
They do
of
on some things.
people like this.
The other,
And we end up doing it anyway.
I don't think it.
over in Dallas, for a while, people
It affects very few people if you think about it.
It's a saving. Origins,
kicking out of that meeting because he.
Seattle got arrested.
Yeah,
That's a lot of yellow mileage.
This is the urban renewal minutes of
Take our
your,
clothes off, it's slowly get written up in the paper for not being transparent. I mean, you can't lose
Just outvote me.
in this town.
just vote.
No,
20 seconds, are you ready?
It'll be okay tomorrow, right? Put it on the table.
slam that gavel down, Mr. Mayor.
I will. This meeting of the regular city council, March 25th, 2019. Linda Miller, Councilor Miller, would you please? Oh, we got to do a roll call first. How about a roll call?
Wes Brown,
Yes.
Rod Runyon,
Here.
Tim McLaughlin,
I'm here.
Linda Miller,
Present.
Mayor Mays, and Darcy Longford absent.
Now we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will everyone join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight, on approval of the agenda, we're going to pull board item number 11B, purchase of a 2018 combo vacuum truck from the agenda. Everyone? Okay. Oh, yeah, we need to have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried. All right, now we move on to presentations and proclamations. We have a fiscal report from Marina and Company. Ms. Moffett?
Honorable Council, I'm here to present the June 30, 2018 financial statements.
Pull the microphone a little closer for me. Great,
Okay.
perfect.
Honorable Council, I am here to present the June 30, 2018 financial statements for the City of the Dalles and the Columbia Gorge Regional Airport. I'm happy to report that we have an unmodified or a clean opinion, which is the highest level of financial statement opinion we can give on a set of financial statements. When we ask for things, we receive them in a timely manner from city staff. Didn't matter if we were in the finance department, city manager's office, whatever department we were in, we got access to any of the records that we requested. So that goes to show just how fiscally responsible the city is. I'd also like to point out that this is a comprehensive annual financial report which is actually an award from the Government Finance Officers Association that the city received for the June 30, 2017 financial statements, and the city has submitted for the June 30, 2018. We believe that the city will receive it for this year as well, that it's kind of a year in arrears because you submit it, and then 3 independent reviewers go through and look at the financial statements. But what it means is that city's staff is taking the time to put together financial statements that have extra information in it, and basically the gold star of government financial statements. So for example, in the back of the financial statements, there's a section labeled statistical section. What that has is 10 years worth of historical data. So that's great if you're wanting to look at a snapshot of the city and look at 10 years worth of information. Go to the statistical section, because that's something that not all municipalities have. Only people that do the comprehensive annual financial report do this. The one minor caveat of that is that the Government Accounting Standards Boards, who sets all the rules that the city has to follow, they have been making a lot of changes lately, and so sometimes those changes make it so that they're not comparable from year to year. So for example, the June 30, 2018, there was a new pronouncement, GASB 75, which is other post-employment health care benefits. So you will see some new numbers in these financial statements that are not in the June 30, 2017 financial statements. So you will see some, it's not comparing apples to apples, just because there's some new accounting pronouncements. So I want to point that out, that there are some different changes. There are some estimates in the financial statements. So for example, we don't know exactly how long a police car is going to last. So there's an estimated useful life of those assets. So it's depreciation. So there's also net pension liability. That's an estimate that comes from the actuaries. And so that's not a number that the finance department is selecting themselves. There is an actuary, Milliman's, who actually comes up with those numbers for the city for the pension liability. I do have one finding that we found when we were doing the financial statements, and it's listed on page 108. It's the big one. So what we found is that there were several internal controls within the city that were not being followed. Internal controls help to prevent or detect or correct a misstatement in a timely manner. This adjustment was specifically related to municipal court. Internal controls were not being followed and have additional oversight of the review. The city's response was that the city agrees with the finding, and the finance department has already implemented additional oversight and review of the municipal court and corrected the formula errors within the year-end adjustments. We believe that this is appropriate. There's been additional things that have happened since this report was finalized that we believe are on track with being able to correct this problem that happened within the city. So I'm not as concerned about it now that there's been some corrective action plans with city staff, city management, and the finance department there. So I did want to point that out to you. That was the only thing that we found that rose to a level of a finding. We had a couple of minor things that listed on page, or one minor thing that's listed on page 109. And so the state legislature has some specific things that they want us to look at for Oregon municipal auditors. So for example, ORS 279, like public purchasing laws, to make sure that if the city is going out for bid, that everybody has an opportunity to bid. We also look at Oregon budget law to make sure that the city's in compliance with Oregon budget law. So some of these things are not necessarily financially related, but they're things that the Oregon State Legislature has said they want us to specifically look at for Oregon municipalities. So when we looked at that for the city, the only thing that we found is that there was one expenditures in excess of appropriations, and that was the water capital reserve transfers out by $414. It's not uncommon to have it. It was probably an invoice that came in after year end and it wasn't known that it was coming in. So it's very common to have some budget overages like that, but there's only one of them. So I'm happy to report that everything else was in compliance there. Does anybody have any specific questions for me on the financial statements or the finding?
No, thank you.
I'm not smart enough to ask anything.
If there's anything that you guys should read, it's the management discussion and analysis. It's got a snapshot of the entire information it's a snapshot of the city government. And it has 2 years' worth of information. So it's a great place to look if you want to see what the significant changes are, capital assets, debt, that information.
Excellent job, thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks.
Unless you want me to.
It's okay.
Go Columbia Bruins. All right. Now we have an audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on a subject which does not later appear on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will refer to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. Is there anyone that wishes to speak tonight? Okay, having that, we'll go ahead and go on to city manager report.
I have no report tonight.
City attorney report.
Thank you, Councilor McLaughlin. A few items for the council's information. On the agenda tonight, you have the chamber's proposed work plan and budget, and I have a meeting scheduled this week to meet with Lisa and the chamber chair about the new contract that would become effective July 1st, so we'll probably take that into account, whatever your discussion is tonight, and hopefully we'll get that process underway. So we finally got that meeting scheduled. I wanted the council to know, too, I was invited to do a presentation on our mental health court at a seminar at the Criminal Justice Association on April 5th. They have just very few cities that actually have a mental health court in operation, and they contacted me and asked me to be on a panel to talk about the mental health court. So I'll be going down on April 5th and talking about the successes we've had and maybe, unfortunately, a few failures, but just to emphasize it's been really a good program for us, and I have samples of what we did to establish the court to offer that available if other cities want to do it. So it was kind of an honor to be asked to do that. We're one of the few cities that have that. So I want to let you know I'll be doing that on the 5th. I also wanted to talk to the council briefly about a piece of legislation I read about last week that the League of Oregon Cities had talked about. It's House Bill 2016, which is basically dealing with labor issues, but it primarily deals with some matters involving requiring a specific specific method to collect dues for union members, and also would require public employers to prevent the use of their email systems from attacking union activities. There's other provisions in the bill that the League opposed. The bill apparently has pretty much passed out of the committee in the House. It's headed to the House floor. The League has encouraged cities to contact their senators and express some concern about this bill, so I wanted to bring it to your attention and see if you want myself and Julie to talk to our labor negotiator and determine whether it would have a negative impact on us. Certainly the collection of the dues could be, as well as the email system, because trying to control that, prevent anti-union activity could be somewhat problematic. But they encouraged us to perhaps contact our senators and express some concern about the bill. So I wanted to see if you want us to do that at this point, or wait and see if the bill moves any further in the Senate. Apparently, they think it's going to pass out of the House and likely will go to the Senate.
Can you explain that a little more?
Well, as I understand it, I think part of it may come up from that Janus decision about the collection of dues, but it apparently sets up a process that we don't necessarily follow about how the dues will be collected, and puts some burden on us to have to implement that. It's sort of a one-size-fits-all. And again, the League opposed that. One of the provisions they were concerned about basically says we allow our public employees to use our email system to communicate, but there's a provision in the bill that the public employers have to prevent the use of the computers in any anti-union activity, and I don't know how we could regulate that. That would be very hard, but it's a requirement in the bill as it's proposed.
And the dues collection is contrary to Janus?
Well, it appears to be an attempt to implement it, but it looks awfully confusing. I read the bill today, and it's fairly complicated, and to me, seems to just maybe put more burden on us than we currently have. So the League at least felt it was just, they opposed the bill, excuse me, and they were encouraging cities to contact their senators and express some concern about the bill as drafted.
I would concur that we should do that.
Okay, I agree.
Okay, I thought I would contact maybe Adam, our colleague, our labor negotiator, and see what thoughts he might have. Our OPU contract doesn't come due till 2020, but I know we have our currently
We do have
placed
the
in.
Janus language in there.
Right, so I think we're pretty well covered, but I don't know whether we'd be covered under this new legislation that's been proposed, so
Okay.
we can talk with Adam about that and see if he thinks, but I wanted to at least bring it to the council's attention and see if he wanted us to follow up on it, so we'll do that.
On the mental health court, do we have any documentation or information that's gathered with statistics?
Excuse me, sorry. The meatloaf's coming back at me
Yeah, it was
here,
good
so-
meatloaf.
It was good meatloaf. I was able to gather some information from 2012 to 2017 in terms of the number of people that participated and those who successfully completed it, and also whether they've re-offended or, and I can share the information in my presentation with the council. That kind of will give you a snapshot about how many people we've had in the program through that time period and what the success rate was and so forth. But I'd be glad to share that with the council.
Any information on the webpage, our webpage, that's accessible to the public?
No, but we could probably
That would be something that would-
because it's a PowerPoint presentation that I prepared, and we could probably share that on our website.
All right, that's great. Anyone else? All right, counselor reports. Counselor Brown,
I really don't have anything.
Counselor Runyon.
I do. I just emailed it to you. 321, we had another session of the Local Government Academy. It was on planning, economic development, code enforcement, and urban renewal. It's designed for citizens, but I'm a citizen, so I've been going to that. It's excellent. Everyone should sign up for that next year. It's very interesting. The next day of the 13th, Columbia Gorge Community College Foundation Awards included a Q Life Scholarship, and I'm the city's representative to that. We gave away $2,000 scholarships to the college to deserving students. On the 15th, there was a town hall, Congressman Greg Walden here, I was there. On the 19th, the Dells Visioning Clinic at the Civic Auditorium. Came later that evening, could only stay for half of urban renewal as an observer, and it was the exact same presentation before I had to leave, so the good stuff was afterwards. I'll let somebody talk about urban renewal. That night, Coastal Conservation Association meeting was held. Lisa had invited me, Farquharson, and it's the Columbia River Gorge chapter regarding economic loss to the local fishing economy through what I would call random ODFW closures on the upper part of the Columbia. On the 20th, I was asked to speak to the Celilo chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution on veterans issues. Talked about PTSD and a number of issues in that realm that I work with on a regular basis. And then on the 21st, a League of Oregon Cities Small Cities meeting, which is for towns like Mosier and Duffer and Maupin and, all of that, Cascade Locks. Only 3 small cities were there. The meeting got moved from Mosier because they had a conflict. It was held in Hood River. I was there, and Paul, the mayor of Hood River, was there. So, but we also had in the room, and why I think it's interesting to go to these things, because it says anybody can come, and I'm definitely anybody. ODOT was there. Regional Solutions Director Nate Stice was there from the governor's office. McEd was there, and USDA had a representative there. So there's lots of good information that affects all communities, and these meetings are held all around us. The last one I went to was in Duffer back in December. The Wasco County Pioneers, I went to their meeting on the 21st, and I'm a member. We're planning our May 4th open to the public annual banquet at the Readiness Center. If you have not been, it is really worthwhile. It's a great meal always, a couple of choices of food, fish, and something else, but it's just the history of the area. It's pretty amazing. And that's May 4th. And then on that same day, went to the Columbia Gorge Veterans Museum down by the old American Legion. I'm a founding board member there. We had a reception for Elizabeth Estabrooks, Some of you may have met her. She's an Army veteran. She heads the Women's Veterans area for the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs. The following day, and I could not be at that meeting at the Veterans Home, I think there were 3 ladies there that are residents at the Oregon Veterans Home that received medals from World War II era in Korea that they had never gotten. For one reason or another, they had left the service, moved on. Nobody ever caught up with them, but that was corrected this last Friday. That's my report.
Councilor Miller.
I attended a Household Hazardous Waste and Recycling Committee meeting, and I wanted to bring to the council, there was a grant request for a person that wants to purchase large ticket items for recycling, like a cardboard binder, and she was asking for, she and her sons have this business, and she was asking for an excessive amount, my opinion. She wanted $50,000 for these pieces of equipment. And right now, there's very little recycling going on. And so I wanted to hold off in voting on that until I brought it to the council. And I know I'm a representative for the city on that committee, but it's also involves my job. And she has since decided to back off because she's not she has some pretty good accounts, but one of her accounts was the Dalles Disposal and Hood River Garbage, and they are no longer doing business with her. So she has backed off on her grant, and she went from $49,000 down to $23,000. And I just wanted to present it to you for what's happening.
Is this the company that's currently in Tye Valley?
It was,
Oh,
and she has moved out of Tye Valley, and she's now in Cascade Locks. So I just wanted you to be aware.
The grant comes from,
It comes from the funds that are collected for, Household Hazardous Waste and Recycling operates on funds that are collected at the landfill on every ton that comes in from Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties. And lately, the tonnage has been up, so the dollars are up. But like I said, recycling, it is not where it was. We're hoping that it can get back to where it was. But at this point, no. So I just wanted to bring it to the attention of, you had something else?
No, I was just wondering, are you asking the city council for concurrence on it or anything? Or just,
Well, if you would like to, but I just wanted to present it, so. And then I attended the Dalles Sister City Association meeting, and the delegation, the student delegation, those students are, they're fundraising and trying to come up with the dollars because it's their responsibility to buy their ticket to go to Japan. And so then the Dalles Sister City, ourselves, and again, I'm a representative from the city to that agency, doing our own fundraising for when delegates come here from Japan. And it's moving along, and I'm so impressed. I've said it before, I'm so impressed with the administration of that committee at this point. And then I was at Urban Renewal Tuesday night, last Tuesday night. And we had an election of officers and a presentation on, that's going to be presented here tonight, so. Okay? Any questions?
No. I attended the historic Walden Drug presentation held or hosted by Eric Gleason. It was very comprehensive timeline of the building from its inception until now. After the meeting, I responded to several attendees with follow-up questions. I found it very enlightening and it was well presented. I attended a recent urban development meeting and came away with the impression that great things are happening in our city. One of the action items that we'll be reviewing tonight was discussed, as well as a community vision for downtown The Dalles presented by Julie Fisher. And that was enlightening as well. It was well done. I'm a non-voting member of the Urban Development Board, so I think I can be called on to render a decision tonight without any conflict.
You are a voting member
Yeah.
of the Urban Renewal Agency.
Okay, that's urban renewal, yes. Historic landmark, no.
Correct. yes.
My error. Okay, so I got that straightened. So, will that affect tonight if we...
No, because
Got
it's,
it. Okay, and Saturday, I was the second car behind a large RV that was turning right at 2nd and Cherry Heights Road. There was a near 3-car miss. One was pulling in from AutoZone, one turning, another one coming in, and they all screeched to a halt. So, I'm going to keep this revised. I know that we're in process, and I appreciate that, but as soon as you know anything, let us know so we can move forward. We just want to keep the attention on that area because that is a serious problem. And
Traffic counts were supposed to have been completed last Tuesday
I like that.
for the analysis to begin.
Okay, so we'll be working closely together. All right, December 30th, we have a planning meeting and visioning and goal setting this
December?
March 30th.
March. Oh, March. Okay.
You're either very late or very early.
March 30th, yeah. And just want to remind everyone of that. Starting at what time?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Saturday morning.
Where?
It's the Four Seasons Event Center. Is that the correct term?
And finally, I attended Columbia Gorge Community College Job Fair, not as a participant, but I did go up just to see what was happening, and I did notice that there was many good applications for the college, so it just, good things are happening in our community, and the college just appears to be doing well. So I wanted to make mention of that. In that, do we have anything else under presentations? Okay, consent agenda. Items of routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the City Council to spend its time and energy on important items and issues. Any councilor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. One is approval of March 4th, 2019 regular City Council meetings, approval of March 11th, 2009 regular City Council meeting minutes, and declare 4 non-working small engines, is that still on?
Yes.
As surplus property and authorize donations to the Dalles High School Mechanics Program. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'd move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor, signify. Any opposed? That's a unanimous vote. Okay, we move on to section 11, contract review board actions. Award contract number 2019-002, 2019 sanitary sewer CIPP lining. Dale McCaig will be making the presentation.
Okay, good evening, members of the council. This is our annual CIPP lining contract that we like to try to put out every year. The CIPP stands for Cured in Place Pipe and it's a lining contract that we do for our sanitary sewer and storm lines. We haven't been able to do one in the last 3 years, even though we like to do it annually, but because we were saving, building up money and funds for assisting with the wastewater treatment plant project as we were moving through that, so it's been like 3 years since we've done one. But this contract, we're looking at doing 11,800 feet of sanitary sewer pipe in the city. 214 feet of that is for a line that we're letting Wasco County put in on our contract with. Since we have received the awards and the bids, we have confirmed with Wasco County that they are still interested in having that line done, and they have agreed to pay for their portion of that line. We did budget $400,000 for this project. As we were putting the contract together over the course of the year, we found that we had some additional funds that were in that that line code 50, the Special Reserve Fund 56, line code 763 or 7630, sorry, so that we tried to put out about a $500,000 contract instead of the $400,000 contract. Our engineer's estimate was for $498,205. The low bid on the project actually came in at $593,546. So it was about $100,000 more than what we had estimated for our engineer's estimate. The reason for the higher bid amount was, as part of this contract, what we've done in the past, we've just been lining the mains with the CIPP lining. On this contract, we're looking at grouting and doing testing on the service laterals that tie into the mains, because over the years we have found that that's a spot and that we still receive infiltration into the sanitary sewer system, and that's part of the lining project that we're trying to do, is eliminate that infiltration that we get. And it also is another spot for roots to be able to find their way into the line and get into the main, but also into the sanitary sewer service lateral that serves the residents' property. So we were looking at adding in that extra aspect into this contract to have all of those service laterals sealed up with a chemical grout and tested. And the cost that we received for that portion came in a little bit higher than the research and the information that we had obtained over the years, over the last year. But with that, like I said, we had a total of $400,000 budgeted for the project in the Special Reserve Fund 56, line code 7630. And in addition, there was another $257,761 that was allocated in that same budget for future sewer projects. So with that, we have a total of $657,761 available for this project. So with that, we would recommend that the council authorize the city manager to enter into contract with In Situ Form for for the 2019 sanitary sewer CIPP lining contract in an amount not to exceed $593,546. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions, Councilor Brown?
I've been told to be recognized before
All
I
right,
speak.
you're recognized.
My memory may be a little foggy here, but it seemed like a few years back, we had some issues with one of the companies that was doing our slip line work. Is this In Situ Form the one that we had the troubles with?
It is the same one. Their headquarters are out of Missouri, and so hopefully we are dealing with a local firm that's over out of the Salem area now, even though their headquarters is in Salem, and it's not the same people that are in that running the company now that there was a couple of years ago.
Okay, that's all I got.
And the problems that we were having with them, it wasn't necessarily the work and the quality of work that they were doing, it was
Getting it done.
communication and getting them back to finish up the punch list items.
Counselor Runyon.
Without even knowing that history, thank you. The question I had written down was along that line, and is it only the lowest price, or can you exercise the quality or work history and choose a different bidder in a bid process, or bringing previous projects in on or under cost without a lot of change orders? Can you look at other things other than the dollar amount listed on the bid price?
I believe we have to look at just the bid price.
Well, that's correct. Excuse me.
It wasn't up here, these came in so high, but,
Yeah.
you know.
One of the issues you can look at in terms of responsibility does involve their prior experience, whether they have a history of bringing projects in under budget, or whether there's been a really negative experience. And we do have the ability, if we have a contractor who has a history of not being able to bring projects in under budget, or we had a really negative experience, we could possibly consider them not responsible, and they would have a right to appeal that.
Yeah.
But once we get the bids and determine that they are qualified, we typically have to go with the lowest bid at that point. But we can consider their history as part of their pre-qualification process, and their responsibility to determine that they are a truly responsive and responsible bidder.
So you would go over that before it came to the council?
Right, and I think we did that with all three of these, and I
Okay.
believe they were all determined to be qualified.
All right,
Right.
thanks.
Councilman Brown.
I just wanted to say that, as Dale stated, you know, there wasn't a problem with the quality of the work. It was just that in the end, they didn't really get things wrapped up quite as.
In a timely manner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my question was generic, I didn't know the history that they'd had actually a problem.
All right.
Okay.
So I think to answer part of your other question though, with the bid amount exceeding what we were looking at doing, we could negotiate with with the contractor at the council's direction to try to remove X number of lines or whatever to get it down to the original $400,000 budget, if that's what the council's interested in doing, but.
The original was 498.
Well, that was our engineer's estimate. What we had budgeted originally for the contract was $400,000.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
The only thing I have to say is that there is a whole lot more of this that has to be done, and if we have the dollars, let's get done what
Yeah.
you're asking for.
Okay. Any other questions? What's your pleasure, council?
I'll move to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with In Situ Form for the 2019 sanitary sewer CIPP lining contract number 2019-002 in amount not to exceed $593,546.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous vote.
Thank you.
All right. We're going
Thanks,
to
Dale.
take a look at the approval of the Dalles Chamber of Commerce work plan proposal, yes? A, adoption of special ordinance number 19-583, ordinance establishing an enterprise zone special reserve fund.
City Attorney Parker will give the staff report.
City Attorney Parker.
Catching up with my mouse here, sorry. Just be there in a second. This is essentially a housekeeping measure. It's part of the process to carry out the commitment that the city and the county made with the college for the project known as the Treaty Oaks Skills Center project. As part of the financing contract that we entered into with the college, we agreed that the project fees to be paid pursuant to the August 17, 2015 agreement with Design LLC would go to pay for the commitments the city and the county made. And this ordinance would allow us to establish a special reserve fund where those proceeds will go in. I believe we provide you with an updated copy of the ordinance, and the two changes that we made to what was in the packet are in the fourth whereas clause, where we just specifically state that the project fees that will be paid is pursuant to that August 2015 agreement. And then section 1A below, the source of money again just refers to the particular abatement agreement. We had a reference to any enterprise zone agreements, and in talking with Angie and Matthew, they felt we should make it clear that we are talking about the 2015 agreement. We have posted the adoption of this ordinance pursuant to the city charter, so you can adopt it by title only if you are inclined to do that, and that's staff's recommendation.
All right.
And if we can do it by title only, if you can, I had a scripture, I think, for you to follow.
No, it may be in here somewhere, but,
Just need to ask if anyone wants it read in full.
okay, we'll do that. But first of all, are there any questions? Okay, now we need to know if you want that read in full.
No.
No.
All right, we hear that. All right. City Clerk?
Special ordinance number 19-583, an ordinance establishing an enterprise zone special reserve fund.
Good. All right,
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
excellent. A second?
By title.
Second.
Yeah.
By title.
Yeah, the motion would be to adopt by title only.
By title only. Yes.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor,
Aye.
signify by saying aye or raise hand.
Aye.
All, any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, now we go on to approval of the Dalles Area Chamber of Commerce work plan proposal.
We have the Chamber of Commerce here tonight. I think they have some things to share and some things to say, but I did have one question from the council this morning, so I kind of wanted to just touch on that a little bit, and that was, should it go to the Budget Committee before the City Council approves? And so what we've done traditionally, and according to our agreement with the Chamber, is that, thank you, the City Council approves the work scope and budget, and that is the number that then gets used to develop our budget. Then it goes to the Budget Committee for their consideration, and then back to the City Council during the budget adoption process. So you'll see it again in June when we adopt the budget.
A question about that? Why is that different from, let's say, McCad has a budget item that's an outside agency, and that doesn't come to the council first and then go to Budget Committee, it goes through the budget from what you set up and then comes to council?
Correct. But this is set out in our agreement with the Chamber to provide the tourism
Okay.
services. There's actually a specific timeline that says they will present it to the City Council in March, and then the City Council has time to discuss it and make changes and approve it, and then it goes to Budget Committee.
So we're simply following the guidelines.
So we're still going to be up to the Budget Committee to make an approval or disapproval and send it on back to the council?
Correct.
I just want to make sure we got that out there.
Right. And so I reviewed this with Lisa. I did ask her to increase one line item specifically, which was the small grants, because we talked about last year combining that all. The chamber already has the criteria to do that, so that's reflected in this budget as well. And I wanted to just let you know that, excuse me, my review of this document, I was really impressed with it and pleased with it because I felt like it addressed all the areas that were raised through our work sessions in 2017 and 18. So I thought that was very positive. You're welcome.
Ms. Farquharson?
Good evening, City Council. I'm just appreciative that we get to be here. And yes, I brought you some items in your little bag because I'm actually going to refer to a couple of those. We've kind of changed how we normally present. Tonight, I am focusing on the scope of work and the budget, and then I get to come back and visit you in April for our annual report. So you'll get the whole schmeal and a few more stats because we're waiting till April to do that. But there are a few things that I wanted to highlight before I dive into my scope of work, because these are some things that we've been working hard on to change a few things. So I want you to refer to this called The Real News, and it's your newspaper. I also brought you Cherry Festival posters, because you know.
Bag under $50.
Yes, it is, sir. I guarantee. is under 50 bucks. There's no cherries in it, sorry. That kept the cost down. So this is a publication that we have been working with for a couple of years, The Real News, and it is, as you can see, a fishing publication, but is based in Seattle. This is where some of our big traction is coming from the Seattle target. And if you flip to the little yellow flagget that you all have in there, so you can be flipping open to Flaggets. I call it a flagget because it flags where I need to be. So I'm not sure what you might want to call it, stickers, Post-its, but it's called the Fishing Central The Dalles. So we've been working really hard. We've been pushing for the low-hanging fruit of fishing and getting lots of attention and traction. But now we're working with our fishing publications and getting them to think outside the box and actually come and visit us and do all of the fun things. That's not me. Okay. It's okay. So we have been working with them to come and experience the Dalles as a whole. And so the Real News decided to come down, and they wrote this amazing article on using the Dalles as a hub and experiencing it, the food, the beverage, the attractions, and all of those things. And then this is the publication that was printed in time for the Northwest Sportsman Show and was handed to every attendee of the Sportsman Show, which was over, is it 50,000? I believe 50,000 people attended. Not everybody took a publication, but these were given out to every person for that opportunity. So the Dalles is front and center right there. And that's one of the things we've been working on key with our publications that are fishing. Now that they've got people's attention about the fishing, now we're grabbing their attention on telling them what else is in our location. The only other one, there's articles in both of these that we've been featured. The Alaska Airlines, this goes on every seat behind the passenger seat on the airline itself. And we are featured in here with a great article with lots of our attractions mentioned. And same with the VIA magazine, there again, we're mentioned with lots of our attractions mentioned in that article. Now, not all of these are stories. I'm going to flip open to the Women's Day. This is part of what we do with our advertising. And this has the blue Post-it little sticker, if you don't want to call it a flag. So we try really hard to make those dollars for advertising go as far as they can. And we just happened to be, Women's Day called us up and said we have an odds and end one. Someone was supposed to do it. They didn't. They backed out of their contract. It's left over. It was a quarter of the price for a full page. And because it's Women's Day, we did an ad that was fun with all women doing activities in the Dalles. And it just happens to be on the opposite page of Yellowstone, so we thought we were very well placed. So this is just another one of those things that we are doing and trying to watch our advertising dollars and be as effective as possible. Advertising, as you know, is the hardest one to gauge for your return on investment, but we're finding that the more and more we do consistently with a few of our target publications, the more and more those cities where those publications are hitting our website. So one of the things I do want to hit on before I dive into this is one of the radio that we worked with has broadcast of their show in 63 cities. We have an ad with them because we sponsor their show, so I get into their show much cheaper than if I were to go put an ad on every one of those radio stations for every week of the year. So because of that, now we're being broadcasted in 63 cities, and actually he just upped it to 66, and we are noticing the correlation between the cities where it's being broadcasted to the cities that are looking at our website. So it is working, and it is hitting the target. Mr. Roger Nichols over there helped me with this amazing commercial so that we had good quality, and it covered so much of our community, and it was the concise, precise message. So it works great, and we're seeing results from those pieces of sponsoring. So the other piece is we are on TV. Some of you may not know that. We have a commercial. It is being tagged in with the Northwest Fishing Reports, and that is on 3 3 of the Fox stations in Spokane, Tri-Cities, and up in the Wenatchee area is broadcasting. Well, they just entered a new market, and we got in at a heck of a deal. So we'll be in 29 spots on a weekend show in Fox, Portland. So with our commercial tagged into this program, and because we do that, they do 2 to 3 episodes filmed in the Dalles as another target that will be shown throughout the year on their programming. It's called Northwest Fishing Reports. So there again, this partnership is gaining us some huge grounds for a minimal investment. So we're super excited about breaking into the Portland market on their TV. So we're working on new commercials, just saying, because that other one was a little bit lower budget one. So we're working on some new aspects with somebody who is coming in May and June to do 3 new commercials, family-oriented, recreation, attraction-oriented, and then totally outdoor rec. We'll be rotated between all 4 of those Fox stations. So we're hoping that that target will even expound the awareness of the Dalles even more. So that's where that's at on that. I'm going to just dive into this. You guys have had this budget and the scope of work. I don't know how much we want to dive in. Let me just ask you, do you want me to go through each category, or do you want me to highlight on the budget, or do you have some questions? I would love to answer questions. Rod?
I do, actually.
Can we just do that?
Waiting for the mayor.
Are you guys okay with that instead, just asking questions? Great, go ahead.
I was so looking forward to your slideshow, though, since we've all
That's
seen it.
April.
Oh, okay. We're not going to see that.
We'll make sure I have a video of some city council doing a commercial.
So I was reading under budget implications, the city is required to spend a percentage of the transit room tax on tourism-related activities. This budget meets that requirement. I'm new. What's the requirement? What's the percentage?
Just our ordinance,
I believe it's 21%.
21%, and we have traditionally
Angie?
spent
I
around
think.
50-something every year for probably the last 10 years that I know of, if not longer.
50% probably total on tourism, because I don't think ours is 50% of your total, but.
Correct.
Yeah, so, but they are spending around 50% on tourism itself.
55.
So, because some of that includes, the Fort Dalles Museum, Discovery Center, and then Parks and Rec has a part of that also. So there's all different kinds of pieces, and we all do different activities and things to promote that outside coming in.
I would just note in the future, maybe that kind of detail might be interesting to have
Yes,
inside
I
of the budget
apologize.
implications.
Didn't pay attention to having a new person, I'm sorry. And we do a budget issue paper on that, that'll be presented at
Yeah.
budget that details it out precisely.
Right, I understand that, but this is what came out on the web now. Yeah, thank you.
Heather, well, I'm waiting. Oh, I'm sorry.
So what percentage are we giving to the chamber?
I would estimate it's probably about 30, maybe.
I think it's
right around
averaged between 20 to 30 consistently.
And that's in that 50%
within- Yes.
bracket? Okay.
Okay. Counselor Brown?
Well, I'm good.
Good.
What?
I
No
read the material.
questions?
I read the material.
Oh,
Correctly.
Everyone's happy then. Any other discussion items or any other comments?
you guys got to have more questions than this. I came prepared.
This was a good document. It
Oh,
had-
okay.
It had all the answers I wanted.
All right. Counselor Miller?
So, reading this budget, so it was 290,000 that went to the chamber last year? Is that what is
Yes,
up at the heading?
yes.
So what's this 193 down at the bottom?
That's this year to date. So
That was as of February, what we've allocated out already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we still have quite a few more months to go, and I usually front and back end my advertising and marketing and campaigning. So we front-ended with many of our obligated 12-month publications, and now we're going to be working into that campaign, the billboard, the commercials, and all of that during this last half, because we don't really want a video when it's winter. So we'll be doing it when it's spring and much more green. And so that's what we are working on is for the May, is those videos will be being produced at that point.
So the difference between the 290 and the 325 that is for 1920, that's 30,000 for the small grants? And what's,
I think
20.
we put in $20,000 for the small grants.
what, TRT grants for events, 30,000?
Right, but we added, it was only 10.
We already commit out of our budget every year. We've already committed every year. We do $8,000 to $10,000 of our own budget that comes through TRT for small grants. And then Julie asked us to increase and add the additional 20 from the program that the city does. So now we'll be doing 30. We have a form, an application, and a committee and a process. So it goes through that. But yes, we do small grants. We've been doing them since I got here for events. We helped with Fort Dalles Fourth one year. We've helped with the Wagon Con and a few other events that we do. We help with the Rotary's Cruisin' and those ones every year too. So those come out of our budget every year. She just upped the amount so that we can help more events.
So what we normally would spend in the council budget is here.
Okay.
Does that answer your
What those
question?
events are?
It would depend, they have to apply.
Oh, is that the ones that were done in January?
Yeah, that we are
Oh,
now
okay, gotcha,
having
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions?
Everyone looks happy,
Well, hold on just a minute.
all right?
So I'm not understanding, let me see, where's this line? Oh, equipment maintenance and repair, in 1819, it was $1,473. In the proposed, it's $3,500. It says a decrease. Isn't that an increase?
But the 1373 that you're looking at is only a half a year, a little over half of the current year.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, so next year, here's what I'll do for you guys. I will put the budget that it was. It was suggested to show you guys what we've spent so far. You can kind of get an idea how our year works. But next time, I'll actually give you 3 columns, what we're asking for, what was, and then what's expended. And I can gladly do that. And actually, I can bring that to you in April. When I do my annual report,
Well,
I'll
this
add
is just
that.
confusing to me.
Yeah, no, I totally understand, Linda, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
You're on.
The I-84 billboard, at one point you said something about it's not exactly where you would like it to be? Would
Yeah.
like it to be closer to the Portland?
Yeah, till I saw the
Rockdale area?
price.
Until you saw the price?
Yeah, no, it's way out of our budget scope right now.
Okay.
Someday, that's my dream.
Okay, so where is the billboard?
It's going to be, we've had to
Oh,
work on a campaign. It's going to be in June contracted, and then that's when the contract will renew every year is in June. We are working on a campaign. We had something in the works, but over the last 2 years, that trend has really trended. And it's like, you know what? We're not going to be jumping on that trend. It's not going to work and it's not going to last. It's going to be out before we get everything up. So we're working on a different type of campaign that will be more consistent and something that can be up there for a long time and won't lose its momentum. It will be just something we continue to gain off our own assets that we have already instead of creating a new campaign that could be. So I had used Maker's District for the example, and then boom, I must have said something too loud because it was on TV, it was on downtown Portland, it was everywhere, and it's in Bend, and now it's starting to be where people, oh, it's just a Maker's District. So we don't want to jump on a trend. We want to jump on something that's going to be lasting for the Dalles that means the Dalles. So that's what we're working on right now is a campaign that will do that. And then we won't have to worry about it getting too popular and then people aren't, for lack of better words, it's not the thing. And so we are looking for a different type of longer lasting campaign of the Dalles itself, what it really means. So that's what we're working on.
Anything else?
I'm on a roll, so I might as well go. So I'm also on a board of a landmark in this community.
I'm so glad you asked.
And there was concern at a board meeting recently that there wasn't enough being done by the chamber for us. So,
As the landmarks? So so actually, I'm so glad you said that, because we have a project that is going to just speak to you, I promise. So we have been working on our historic committee, the walking tour, and that includes our landmarks. That has been trying to bring 3 pieces together into one that you can print on a piece of paper that's not as long as a body, because there's a lot of information there. And our history and culture group is just about done. But the exciting piece of that is we have those landmarks in that. We're producing this, we're almost there, producing a really pretty brochure that people will want. But the historic committee that Dawn sits, and I know I'll botch up the name, but Dawn Hurt sits on, and it has to do with the historic buildings. She is on that, and she got a grant for that. That will develop a digital application people can use on their phones. We're taking that historic brochure and putting it onto the digital app, so people will have it available digitally or as a brochure to be having in their hand. So we're hoping to hit 2 very different demographics and really delivering our landmarks and our preserved locations and highlights around our community. So that's what we're in the process. We will be having a rough draft by 2 months, and then ready to go to print after that. And Dawn is working with us hand in hand, so we have the same buildings, the same feel. We have the same person who is doing the print design, working on the digital design. So it'll be a very cohesive, and it'll be on all of the websites. And so we're excited. We have the places of historic interest, but there's no pictures and stuff, but they're all listed, and it's going out the door. But we really are excited about bringing this, and we received a grant to help print ours, and do the design. So that is coming. So I will make sure that you know as soon as it's here, but my committee has been working hard on making sure we have pictures that are licensed or that we can use in brochures, and so we don't get in trouble there. Making sure we have the right historic facts. But we've also incorporated, I think there's 7 to 8 trails of history that are all around the Dalles, and the Dalles is the hub of that trail, of those trails. So that's in the artwork on the back, so that we bring some of that history in there too. So it's a really amazing piece, and it will be pretty cool when we get it out there. So we're hoping before the end of this fiscal year that we will have it in hand for you.
So this landmark that I'm on the board of, when a lot of us, when we're docents, we're asking our visitors where they got the information, how they came to be at our at the landmark. And there are many of the boat people that are coming in that the reason they came to visit was because of the tall spire that's and that's why they're there, that they got nothing on the boat to show what was here.
Well, they are receiving Main Street's their greeting. They receive our Charm Trail brochure, which has the St. Peter's on it.
Okay.
So we're contributing by doing the Charm Trail, but we're not at the dock.
Okay.
And we are not doing the Explore brochure down there, which has St. Peter's also listed as one of our landmarks. So that part, but I do know that we are trying to get as much information as we can, but that's something I think you need to ask Main Street on.
Okay.
Tim? Linda, in answer to that, at least one boat, I can remember being downtown, and the people had the little folder that Linda's referring to. Not everybody always sees everything, but it had a list of all these places in the community to go to and whatnot, but somebody's going to miss that. But
Okay.
they are handing them out on the bibs, on the boats.
Okay.
I'd be glad to make the motion whenever you're ready, sir.
I'm coming, but I just want to make sure
I'm done.
okay.
I love questions, really, I
The
do.
kiosks, I haven't been up to inspect, but I sure appreciate they're really attractive looking at the boat basin. What information is on that?
Those are done by, Dawn got a grant for those from
Okay.
SHPO too, so that's not the chambers.
Not Chambers. Okay, just checking.
Hmm?
Any other, yeah.
Yeah, I do. So you mentioned Main Street. And Dawn with SHPO and the Chamber. Do you work together?
I email and talk to Dawn, and then we get all of our information to Bunny, and then she gets all of the information when they're going to be docking and all of that. So, and then we help post it on our website too.
Okay.
So yeah, no, Bunny actually comes and gets we deliver our Charm Trail because that is an active program and people love it.
Yes, they do.
So we get that to her, and she puts it with their stuff and hands it out to everybody. So no, we try to work with them as much as possible on that piece of it.
Okay, good.
The grant was exciting, especially technology using GPS where you travel into an area and it superimposes onto your smartphone. So you get all the information without having to do anything. That's cool.
I thought you might like that,
I did.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Picked up on that. All right, now,
I'd be glad to make a motion. I'm
Counselor
going
Runyon.
to change it just a little bit, and
All right.
if Attorney Parker or Izetta don't like it, they can just
take it.
let me know. So I'll move to approve the proposed tourism work scope by the Dalles Chamber into the city budget process to be reviewed by the Budget Committee.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I also want to add, by you guys doing this, I know it has to still go through the budget approval, but by you doing this early, it allows me to start planning my advertising, which is actually for January of next year. So thank you guys so much, and I appreciate everything.
Thank you for the goodies.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is First Street Riverfront Connection Project, authorization to proceed with next phase. And you're up.
As he turns his back to you.
Yeah. I'll throw a pin at him.
Spoke with Julie earlier today.
Oh, about,
Yeah, because the motion is toward improving the budget. We can't approve the budget.
This chair. What's the matter? Did it break? And so it's loose.
Yes.
I'll sit up first. We're going to post it.
This PowerPoint project, I've been in that one before.
Have you?
Way too much. So I
Scared?
Oh, so you did it.
I didn't do it
right now, but I felt all right before last week. So
There's a lot.
So maybe PowerPoint.
it's what I'm thinking.
All right, Special Director Harris.
Well, thank you. Vice Mayor? Is that
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem, I like
Pro
that.
Tem, whichever.
Kind of like that.
It's elected humor. You should have a copy of the draft minutes that came from the Urban Renewal Agency Board meeting for last Tuesday evening when this item was before that body. And if you're interested in what the motion from the board was, it's at the bottom of page 3. The last kind of 2 paragraphs kind of sum up the action on the agency there. And with me this evening is our project engineer, project manager on this from KPFF Engineers, Kurt. I did it. Van der Zanden, yes. I'm sorry. I've been sitting out there. Okay. And we do have a brief presentation, PowerPoint, if you'd care to see it. It basically has some of the cost tables that are in your packet. It also has some overhead aerials of the project site itself. So if you would like to see those are available. Just for my benefit, who on the council has been around since the very first beginning of this project? We have, okay, good. So for those of you that haven't been around for the last 10 or 12 years, this project dates from 2006, 2007, when the city was awarded, or some earmarked federal funds. They were earmarked specifically for this project at that time. Following that, we entered into a contract with ODOT to manage those federal funds, and at the time, they totaled about $1.5 million. The city entered into a contract with KPFF in, I believe, 2008 to be the project manager. And Kurt has been with the project since that time, so he has the benefit of being here since the beginning. So if I could, just to summarize, the project was originally scoped as a streetscape improvement project from Union to Laughlin Street in the downtown area. Consisted of streetscape improvements, curb gutter sidewalk, period lighting, period street furniture, enhancements at the crosswalks, on-street parking for a portion of that segment, as well as a one-way bike lane. That was the project as originally scoped. Shortly after receiving the funds and entering into the contract with ODOT and retaining KPFF, the city began to modify the project description, which included a sunken plaza at in the vicinity of First Street and Washington Street, very ambitious. It also included a undercrossing of I-84 and the Union Pacific Railroads, where it could connect to the Riverfront Trail, hence the First Street Riverfront Connection Project. Those costs soon escalated. The design costs, estimated construction costs, and engineering costs. And then in 2000, I think about 2000, may have been 13 or 14, the city received some additional funds from the state, from their state transportation improvement program, STIP funds, about 1.3 million or so. It's in your report. So we did get some additional funding. However, determination was made in 2015 that even with those additional state funds, the project would be underfunded approximately $1 million. So in the fall of 2015, the city put the brakes on the project, returned those STIP funds to the state, and then formally notified ODOT in early 2016 that again, the project would be placed on hold, and we were eliminating or canceling the Washington Street Plaza area and the undercrossing. And so since early 2016, no work has been done on the project. In 2017, ODOT staff contacted the city staff and inquiring what was the city's intentions on the project, either officially notifying ODOT that the project has been canceled or moving forward at that time. So we got a chance to introduce myself to Kurt in 2017 and with the ODOT staff. And at that time, we thought the best approach would be to amend our contract with ODOT, which one would extend our period for construction of the project to January 2021. Then to look at extending the project boundaries easterly from Laughlin to Madison on the First Street area. And then on the westerly to extend it from Union Street to a point west towards Thompson Park with the intention of connecting with the Mill Creek Trailway project that was being proposed and developed by the Parks District. And then we also added an additional task to KPFF's contract to take those previous construction cost estimates and bring those up to date. And the last numbers that Kurt's firm had was from 2015. And we thought in order for the Urban Renewal Agency Board and the City Council to make an informed decision, we wanted to have up-to-date cost figures. Cost figures not only on the original project as scoped from Union Street to Laughlin, but also for these two extension areas, easterly to Madison and westerly to Thompson Park. So that is what Kurt's firm has done. So we were before the Urban Renewal Board meeting last week. We presented this information to the board, and the board's action at that time was to recommend that the easterly extension from Laughlin to Madison not be pursued due to the cost, about $1.2 million, and somewhat limited public benefit. There's a couple of constraints on the right-of-way, so we would not be able to have full improvements as planned in the right-of-way, on-street parking, curb gutter, sidewalk, bike lane, et cetera. And they also directed staff to continue to work with UP Railroad as proposed now as our preferred alternative for that westerly extension, was to utilize a portion of the UP right-of-way to construct a separated bicycle pedestrian path. If there would be a fence that would be secured from the tracks. We had originally reached out to UP several months ago, and they got back to me as I was writing the report. So if you notice in your report, there's bold and underlined paragraph that says, timeout. We just received notice from UP that they are discouraging or would not look favorably on the use of that right-of-way. So kind of forced us to look at alternative B, which is on-street bike lanes from Union to Thompson Park. So the board directed staff to continue to work with UP, to try to continue to work with them to utilize that right-of-way. And then the third component of their recommendation to council was to submit a letter of intent for the Recreational Trail Grant Program through the state of Oregon. And that there's some possible grant funding that could fund that extension from Union to Thompson, regardless. It's eventually what the alignment gets adopted. So that was the three actions. We had asked the board also to consider and recommend to the council for staff to move forward with the next phase of the project from the Union Street to Laughlin Street segment. That was the original segment, to direct Kurt's firm to prepare the construction documents and continue to work forward on that phase. As Kurt will include in his presentation, that is doable at this point, since it is within the original project scope, and there would not need to be any additional studies going forward to use those federal funds. If we were to link federal funds with either that easterly extension that was proposed or the westerly extension, then that will significantly delay the project in those areas due to the need for additional federal studies. So Kurt's suggestion would be to not utilize any federal funding for those extensions, but to use that as part of our local match. So if I could turn the microphone over to Kurt now, you can talk about where we are with our updated construction cost estimates and where we go from here. So.
Can we get this one up?
Yes.
All right. I wanted to have Steve just bring up the estimate that I'm going to be talking to. It's not going to be very visible up here, but it helps me to kind of figure out what I'm going to be talking about here. Yeah, let's go to let's just go to the next one. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is not legible up here, but I do want to walk through what we ended up doing. So after the project was put on hold in 2015, we were approached, I can't remember, almost 9 months ago or 6 months ago, to start taking a look to see what the project would look like with the removal of the pedestrian undercrossing of the railroad, removal of the sunken plaza, and application of some additional value engineering work. So we have column 1 in this estimate, which I believe you have in your packet, is essentially the 95% estimate from back in 2015. The second column over is essentially the 95% design based on 2015 prices with the tunnel and the plaza removed. The third line over is essentially the street improvements only, without the railroad, without the undercrossing, brought up to today's unit prices, and also includes some additional costs associated with doing improvements to the railroad, some pedestrian enhancements to the railroad crossing at Union Street, so at surface crossing there. That probably looks something like gates for the pedestrians themselves. That actually, so the total, in addition, at the bottom of that column, you'll see some additional engineering costs associated with revising the plans to incorporate, or to basically to delete the undercrossing and modify the design in those areas to essentially be streetscape improvements only. Fourth column over is essentially an added water main replacement cost, which was not included in the 2015 project. That was something that we were asked to show as part of this at this point. So the total base project, which is basically First Street to Laughlin, basically we are looking at someplace in the neighborhood of $3.5 million total for that work. The remaining columns are essentially the expanded project limits that Steve talked to, basically carrying the streetscape and water line replacements all the way down to, I'm going to miss it again. You can't get my name right, I can't remember the name of the street. Nope, next one. Madison, there we go, thank you. And also, then we also have the breakdown of the cost for the trail segment as well. Questions on that?
Not yet.
A whole lot more.
So speaking with Kurt earlier this evening, he was telling me that the cost, construction costs, have really increased the last couple of years for a variety of reasons. And so the city council and the board is in a position now, if you feel there is value in moving forward with this project. We do still have remaining about $1.2 million in federal funds. We have a local match on those federal funds of 10.27%. We have as part of our 2009 bond proceeds, and the language in that bond mentioned various infrastructure improvement projects, and this was one of those. So it is covered in that. So if you add those two pots of money together, it's about $4.8 million that we have available. As Kurt was saying, about $3.5 million in estimated construction costs from Union Street to Laughlin, and that does include the replacement of that water main. There may be other funding available for that water main. There could be some other funds that the Public Works Department has available. But all total, we're looking at about $3.5 million to complete this project. About 1.2 is federal funding, which leaves local funds of about 2.3 million. There was discussion also about where this project is today versus where it was several years ago. So, originally it was planned as a fairly simple, straightforward streetscape improvement project. Then there was the discussion and the inclusion of the sunken plaza on Washington and the undercrossing. I believe there was also discussion of a parking structure on that First Street area with the city parking lots. Also during this time, there have been 2 hotel proposals in that Granada block area, so there would have been a lot of activity generated around that. So, once we start kind of stripping away those other items, we're left still with the streetscape project, what was its original intention, and how it would bring a certain level of activity to the downtown. My mantra is always improvements in the public right-of-way enhance private property and add value to those private properties. So, and we do have private property fronting First Street. We also have the city-owned parking lots, surface lots, which perhaps possibly at some future date could be converted to a parking structure. In doing so, I think the plans for that structure at that one time showed ground floor retail on those frontages, so you'd have increased pedestrian activity. The agency owns a couple of lots on that Granada block property still. We've just actually sold, or in the process of selling, what's known as the Blue Building there in Washington. I know we've had some new property owners on First Street as well. So I think what's key to this is what was the original intent of this project. And even though we did add some bells and whistles a few years ago, I think we're back to the original basic project. Also the possibility of extending, whether it's on-street or off-street connection to the Mill Creek Trailway project, I think is a a lot of value, a lot of public benefit in that. The agency has contributed over $94,000 to the engineering and design cost of the trail this last year. And the Parks District is also undergoing a master plan. So there's a real opportunity there to have a continuous off-street bike path along the creek, finding the segment from along 2nd to Union, and then down to the Riverfront Trail, and then going the link to that. So I think that's a real benefit. You know, whether it's funded a part of this project or goes its own separate course, I think that's something that the city and the agency and the district could work together to pursue. You know, there's the question about opportunity cost. That if the agency were to use the proceeds from the bond funds of about $3.6 million, what other projects, infrastructure improvement projects, could be funded? Well, that's a definite question, and it's something that I think deserves some deserve looking into a little more. But again, kind of one of the caveats that is something that is owed a lot of consideration is with these federal funds, that if the city decides not to pursue, then in all likelihood the city will have to reimburse the federal government for those monies that we spent to date, which total about $400,000 plus or minus. And again, these are being earmarked funds. They were for this specific project, and I'm uncertain whether they could be used for another similar project. I've reached out a couple of different times to our representative ODOT with these questions, and I'm still awaiting a response. So,
Councilor Brown.
So if we proceed with the project from Union to Laughlin, that will satisfy the feds that we have spent their money in accordance with the grant that we got, and that will eliminate this need to repay them $400,000 for the engineering that's taken place thus far, or at least in part?
the short answer, Counselor, is yes.
Okay.
This latest contract amendment, again, did a couple of things. It extended till January 2021, completion date for this. Tasked Kurt's firm with updating the construction cost estimates, which they have. And then also we want to look at that easterly and westerly extension. And again, the easterly extension, staff's recommendation, and the board upheld that, was not to pursue that. The westerly extension, although not part of the formal project description, I think it's still something worth considering. But for the use of the federal funds, if we were to just limit that to the Union to Laughlin segment, that would eliminate the need for these additional studies that the feds would require.
And my observation, not being an expert by any stretch of the imagination, the urgency for the westerly extension is fairly low, I would think, because until the Mill Creek Trail is in place, it really wouldn't be of any value to my way of thinking. I mean, the real value is that connection to the Mill Creek Greenway, which would be, I would have to think, 3 or 4 years out.
You know, Councilor, as I mentioned, the Parks District is proceeding with their master plan, and included in that are the design and engineering concerns right now in Thompson Park. So they're moving forward with those design plans. There's also, as noted, that they are intending to apply for state grant funds, which could help them as well. So that's something that probably could be under construction within the next couple of years. So, and then one thing that I wanted to mention with Kurt here, you can help me on this, is once we have the authorization, or if we got the authorization to move forward from council for the original Union allotment, the next phase would be the construction documents.
Yes.
Preparation of plans and specs, a right-of-way acquisition or easements, and then get the bid package ready. And I believe we're looking at, once we have that notice to proceed from ODOT, we're looking at anywhere from a 12 to 15-month period before we're ready to go out to bid. Do you have an idea of how long the bidding process and construction would take?
I think bid, putting me on the spot here. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I believe the bid period itself would probably be someplace in the 2 to 3 month range. I think the construction on what we're talking about, there's probably roughly 9 months, probably at the worst case, 6 months at the best.
So, I'd say 12 months for bid and construction, plus or minus, and another 12 to 15 months to finish the preparation. So that's about 2 years right there, about 24 months. And like I said, this latest contract amendment extended our deadline till January 2001. So I would anticipate that once we get to that point where we are ready to begin the bid process, that we would want to then ask for another contract amendment from ODOT, because we would know at that point, I would think, that we would continue with the project to completion.
And at this point, this section between Union and Laughlin is the only portion of the project that we are being asked to approve, is that correct?
Yes, that was our recommendation to the board as well as the council, to have the authorization to move forward with this next phase for this segment only.
I noticed some conversations in the documents about taking parking out on 2nd and 3rd Street to create a bike lane, and I find that extremely troubling. So as long as it's not part of that project, I'm okay with it.
Well, again, that was Kurt's firm. We looked at two different alternatives from Union to the park. And alternative A, which was the preferred, would be using the UP right-of-way. And that second alternative, B, was a combination of on-street bike lanes, which would impact on-street parking. There was also the discussion to look at perhaps having a shared lane, travel lane, so you wouldn't have a single or separate striped bike lane. Some people like those, some people don't. And then another discussion was on widening the sidewalks on West 2nd Street to allow for pedestrian and bike lanes on a joint use. And I think you're looking probably about a 12-foot wide sidewalk.
That would be the preferred for two-way, yes.
It's probably about double what we have there now in some areas.
And that would eliminate the parking also.
No, you could keep the on-street parking.
Really?
You would have the bike lane and the sidewalk being shared.
Okay, but the only thing we're dealing with here tonight is strictly the Union to Laughlin extension.
Yes.
Cool.
Other question? Yes, Councilor.
So the Union to Laughlin, 2 bike lane?
What we've looked at as part of this was actually looking at doing a two-way bike lane on the north side of First.
Okay.
And with that still allows us to fit basically the one-way traffic heading to the east as well.
And then there's a portion of that area that doesn't have sidewalks and curbs. So there would be sidewalks and curbs in that portion that,
Talking about adjacent to the surface parking lot?
yes.
Honestly, the last time we went through that design in that area, we were actually looking at the parking garage, so there's certainly some redesign that would have to happen there. I think the intent would be to basically keep that parking lot whole, but yes, we would be putting in sidewalk, but it's going to have a fair amount of driveways.
And there's also a building that, I think it's from Federal to Laughlin, that, on First Street, that doesn't have sidewalks and curbs.
The sidewalk would extend through that block as well, yes.
Okay.
It gets a little bit, that one's pretty tight, but yes, we were able to figure out a way to get a sidewalk.
So there again, a dual bike lane on the north side, you're going to eliminate parking.
Well, then that's something that we're going to have to get into detail on. That was something that we looked at to try to get bike connectivity basically through the area as part of this look. We did not have a two-way bikeway on that north side when we put this thing on the shelf in 2015.
Okay.
So we haven't completely nailed down the design on what this revamp is going to look like through there. I think we would like to be able to fit a two-way bikeway through there, but if we can't, then I think we can at least get a single through there.
Until there's some place to go on one end or
Yeah,
the other,
that's-
it's going to be pretty lightly used, I would think.
I would agree.
Councilman Runyon.
Thank you, Linda, for reading my mind again about the bike lane. In the reading material, it really basically said it looked like a westbound only bike lane on a eastbound one-way road. But you think it's going to be a dual,
That was
East and west,
That was
bike lane.
that was the intent, yes.
I'm not a bicycle guy, but I've got Donnie Lewis here, I'm sure he's down there all the time. First Street is one-way east, so that's, you'd have to have, I don't see how you keep bikes from going both ways anyway. First Street, again, there are comments about alternatives such as eliminating parking in some areas on First Street. There are a number of folks living in vehicles from Laughlin on, which doesn't talk about construction here, but as far as, it just seems like from Washington on, it should be no permanent parking down there. Some of these vehicles look disabled, they don't move for weeks, and one in over a month. That might be a consideration to free up some room and have that policed a little better, to have folks move along to another area. But that would help the remainder of First Street beyond Laughlin Street. As far as businesses that are in the area all along First Street for that matter, but Washington would be where the parking lot is, and so, you got other parking right there. Just something to look at, I think.
Well, one thing just to point out is in the 2015 design, it's starting to come back to me now. The 2015 design, we actually did get back to having parking on the north side of First once we got past Federal. So we actually did redevelop having on-street parking through that area. But it sounds to me like that's something that, we're certainly open to re-looking at that and making sure that that's still.
We have parking going back towards Union, because you've got the Bald one, and they use that as
Yeah.
well and whatnot, saloon, but once you get down past Laughlin, it's pretty much seems to be transient parking for the most part, so there might be a way to find some room there, so.
Also part of our transportation system plan that we just adopted a year ago to do this improvement, Dale? Yes.
All right, do we have any other, yes, Councilman Brown?
I'm concerned about parking.
Yeah.
We put a group together, a year and a half, 2 years ago, to study the parking situation, and came up with all these great ideas, and I think it's unrealistic to believe that there'll be fewer cars in the Dalles in 10 years than there are now, and eliminating parking places, you can't get them back. You can't hardly get them back. Maybe a parking structure, but how well would it be used? I don't know. I'd like to see parking as part of the plan, but, you guys know about that stuff better than I do. That's all I got.
All right, Councilman Runyon?
No, it's the problem, that one area I described was the buildings come out further, so you can't put sidewalks in and all that without some sort of a trade-off there, but you do, most of the parking, so I have relatives with a business in that area, it just seems like there's a lot of transient parking, it's not moving in and out, people going to work, that kind of thing, down on that end.
Councilman Miller, do you have anything?
Only that this is strictly about First Street from Union to Laughlin that we're talking about tonight.
Okay.
Would you like a little bit of clarification before you ask for a motion on which parts you're recommending for them to approve tonight?
Yeah, I think that would help.
Yeah.
Are you finished with your PowerPoint?
I'll never ask a planner if he's
Yeah, I
finished with the
know.
PowerPoint.
Give you that. Chief, would you hit the lights, please? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Clarification.
Oh,
Mr. Harris.
and if I could just mention once again the TSP, the Transportation Systems Plan. On the first page of your agenda report, I've listed the 5 areas in that adopted document where this project is listed either as a safety project, a bicycling project, or a pedestrian project. So if you care for a little background on that. The recommendation that came from the Urban Renewal Board was to eliminate the easterly extension from Laughlin to Madison, and that was the staff's recommendation as well. So again, these are on page 5 of your staff report. So the second would be that the board recommended that continue to work with UP Railroad on that westerly extension, use of their right-of-way. Now, that is our preferred extension, so again, I think we would like, again, to concur with the board's direction on that, to continue to work with UP, and then report back to the board and the council on those discussions. And then the third recommendation from the board was to direct staff to submit a letter of intent for the Recreational Trail Grant Program to the state of Oregon. And that's for that westerly connection, again, preferred to the UP. So, again, if the council could concur with the board's direction on that, staff will continue to work with the Parks District and draft a letter of support for their grant application.
So we don't need a motion on that, do we?
No, well,
Are you?
And then I think probably the most important would be to then direct staff to proceed with the next phase for the Union to Laughlin Street segment, and that would be working with KPFF in the preparation of those construction documents, and then we'll continue to report back to council and the board on the progress of those.
So would you be comfortable, I'm just trying to make sure I understand it, and you or the council.
Well,
You're asking them to concur with the Urban Renewal Agency Board's motion and
then add one additional.
and then add the second piece of your staff recommendation as a motion.
That's correct.
Okay.
so is there anyone willing to make that motion?
Does it require a motion?
Yes, the second bold piece of the staff recommendation that says proceed with the next phase of the First Street Riverfront Connection Project for the segment from Union to Laughlin, that's the piece that needs an actual motion. If that's what you want to do. And then, are you comfortable, Jean, with their concurrence with the urban renewal, or do you need them to make that same motion?
Oh, that was a motion was made by the agency, it might be
And it
appropriate.
was adopted, and it was-
Yeah, so maybe just to have
So the whole
the council
recommendation would be,
concur with
With the addition of
Okay.
the other language.
Okay.
Anyone willing to make that motion?
So
Is that on that urban renewal report? or-
All right,
So I'll move to proceed with the next phase of the First Street / Riverfront Connection Project for that segment from Union Street to Laughlin Street, including completion of plan specification and estimates, and to concur with the direction of the Urban Renewal Agency on the westerly portion of, from Union to Mill Creek Crossing.
so we have a motion on the floor. Do we hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Councilor Brown seconded.
If that's what Mr. Harris, I mean, does that sound like it covers what you need from us? Oh,
Yes, my only thought would be, did you want us also to then
Work with.
work with the Parks District and
Yes.
preparing that letter of intent for their grant funding? Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much.
Follow-up
Councilor
question?
Runyon, yes.
Right now with the railroad and whatnot, looking at the photos and the lines and whatnot, the big thing is the fact that they have a possibility of putting a third track in that one area is why they're not open to discussion right now.
Well, if you actually look, we have a drawing in our document that shows that there, even with a third rail, there is adequate space to get minimum clearances.
Yeah, I walked it today.
And so I cannot predict what Union Pacific will decide, but, I mean, it seems that there is a reasonable argument to be made that the trail could go in and actually could potentially enhance the safety. Because as of right now, basically, anybody can basically walk and go out onto the tracks there.
And there's still room from that to the post office property.
Yes, this would be, actually, once we get to the post office site, this would be completely on Union Pacific, because the post office property basically doesn't, their improvements go almost right up to the right-of-way line.
And unfortunately, we've had fatalities on those tracks.
Have you? Okay.
Yes, we do.
At the crossing.
At the crossing.
Well, I guess we had one farther on down too.
Right.
Yeah, they're across
Councilor,
from the swimming pool.
Councilor Miller?
But I believe that half of First Street is on railroad right-of-way, Union Pacific right-of-way. And we're using all of First Street. So
Yeah.
it'd be a hard,
Okay, we've had a motion and we've had it carried. This is a discussion. Anything else before we move on?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, and item D, adoption of resolution number 17-005, amending city fee schedule to revive fixed fees for planning department services, burglary and robbery alarm permits, and establishing a fixed fee for new water and sewer services.
City
And I
Attorney
understand,
Parker.
do we have any language for having any public input in this, or do we need to do that?
Once we get through the staff report, any questions from the council, then we can allow an opportunity for public comment. It's
Got
not
it.
a public hearing, but we could ask at that time for any public input, so
Who is going to make this?
I'll do a brief staff report, and then we may possibly hear from some of the department managers if there's questions related to the specific departments. The council approves the fee schedule for the city. I believe it was initially established in 2001. It's been revised over the years, the last revision being in 2016. We have three primary areas that we're asking the council to look at. One is for the police department for robbery alarms, which is primarily to increase the alarms fee for both robbery and burglary to $20. Chief Ashmore's department found that that's a pretty standard fee among other law enforcement agencies, so they think it's a reasonable fee. The next is Public Works, where they're proposing a new fixed fee for the installation of new meters that measure 3/4-inch water service or 4-inch sewer service for single-family residential dwellings. The primary thought rationale here is that currently, as I understand, the department has to provide estimates, which requires a fair amount of paperwork and sending out staff from Public Works to do the estimate, coming back and then getting the work done, and then billing developers for the cost. In some cases, we've had some difficulty collecting. The department feels that establishing a fixed fee would cut out some of that paperwork, give some certainty to the developers, and increase efficiency. So they're recommending that. For the new 3/4-inch water service, the proposed fee is $2,110. For the new 4-inch sewer service, it would be a $1,903 fee that they're proposing. The last item is for the planning department. They're looking at primarily an overhaul of their existing fees. I included a copy of the current fees, which I believe is towards after the staff report and the proposed resolution, to show you the current fees. The resolution itself has the proposed fee schedule. It has the new fees for the planning department, and I think almost all of them would be increased under the proposed fee schedule. There also are several fees that involve site plan review, and the department is proposing a process where applicants would pay half of the proposed fee as a deposit, and then if they then submitted their application within 6 months of the date that their application was reviewed, they would receive a credit for what they paid towards the total application fee. The department's also proposing a new fee for our exclusive negotiation agreement that we've had with developers over the years. We currently don't charge developers for that. We've found that both my time and the planning department time is a fair amount of time in reviewing those, preparing the documents. So Mr. Harris proposed a $1,000 fee as a deposit, which would be applied toward our actual time involved in reviewing and preparing those documents. Again, as Councilor McLaughlin talked about, we have to allow for public comment on any increase in a fee or a new fee. So after you ask questions of staff, we can ask for the public to have input. And our recommendation is to approve the proposed fee schedule as included with the resolution 19005.
Questions? Yes. Councilor Brown.
I'm disappointed in this staff report because I'd like to be able to look at this fee schedule and see what it was and what it's proposed to be all on the same piece of paper in a column. It wouldn't have probably been any more difficult to do it that way than it is the way it's been laid out. Other than that, I don't have a problem.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, beyond that, there was only 2 pages of the 2016 fees, but there are, I don't know, 6 or 7 pages of these. And I took the old ones and went down on one page and made all the changes that were the same, so I could see them side by side. But are there increases in all these other areas as well?
No, the only ones that are being increased are the 3 that we talked about in the police department.
Plus these, there's a whole page of them here that are being changed.
Planning.
For planning, only planning, right.
But it's a lot of them, but that's,
Yeah, it's-
and planning continues on the back side, and I only found 5 over there. But some of them are like 30% and whatnot, and there's not really any reasons given in the staff report about, I mean, there's some generic reasons about what costs more, but really there's no specifics.
Right, and you may want to ask Mr. Harris,
We do.
and he may be able to tell you more about the reasons for the amounts he came up with. I think a lot of these fees have not been increased for some time, certainly before Mr. Harris was here. I don't know the last time the planning department fees were looked at. It might have been in the 2000s, I think. I don't remember, but in some cases, it's been quite some time, and that may account for what appears to be a pretty significant increase.
I don't care. I understand that, but it just, because somebody else increased it in another community doesn't necessarily mean it has to be increased here. So I just thought there'd be a little more specificity to the.
Well, that was one of the questions that I had as well, was how do these compare to other communities? Are we in line with cities our size with these fees?
If I may, Council, Mayor Pro Tem, the department's fees were last adjusted in 2005.
Well, these were 16.
That's
Well,
just
that's the
last
entire
time.
schedule.
But the bulk of the planning ones were 16.
No,
No.
none of them were increased in 2016 from the planning department.
So 2005 was the last price increase.
For planning fees.
Fine, okay.
So if I
think
may,
what the city attorney provided Counselor Runyon was just so you could see what the current planning fees are. Sorry for the confusion.
I just agree with Councilor Brown. It'd be nice to have some history. If it was '05, that wasn't really apparent when you got the one sheet from 2016. I figured that was the last increase.
Okay, Director Harris.
yes, Councilor and Mayor Pro Tem, the planning department's fees were last adjusted in 2005. So what we did in taking a look at these suggested price increases, I took a look at the consumer price index increase for our area, which does include Portland and MSA, and it was approximately a 33% increase since 2005. I used that as a base. I then took a look at our fees and our current application processes, and in some areas, I was recommending that there would be no change or a minor change. in other areas. I took a look at some of our neighboring jurisdictions and what their price structure would be. And that gives you, sometimes it gives you maybe a false data point, because our costs may not be similar to another city's costs. We're processing the same application for a variety of reasons, salaries, benefits, just the cost, the overhead costs, and et cetera. But you do take a look at that for jurisdictions that are just approximately your same size. In Hood River, for instance, there were a number of fees where we were, just maybe 30 or 40% of what they would charge for the same entitlement. And again, I didn't want to have that comparison and didn't want to raise our fees so that we'd be similar to that, because I couldn't justify what those increases would be. So again, took a look at the cost of living increase since 2005, looked to see what we have done as far as our entitlement and application processing. The site team review application fee, we're suggesting that be 50%. Right now it's zero, or had been zero. And we had a lot of applications would come through, be submitted, go through a site team, a development review committee meeting. There would be staff work by the planning department, by the public works department, by other agencies or other departments involved. An applicant would then come to that meeting, see what conditions or requirements would be placed on their project, and you'd never see them again. So there would be dozens of hours of staff time that would be left on the table. And so we thought an incentive would be to pay half that fee up front. A site team review is good for 6 months. So we thought if you came back with a formal application in 6 months, then you would receive credit for that 50%.
That was in the report, we read that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my take is price increases, whether it's taxes, fees, rate increases, they need to be justified, and they also need to have a public opinion, so we have people that are paying those rate increases have a say into justifying it. And so we're very sensitive to that. And that would be the next thing that we would need to extend is public input, and then a chance to go back and reflect. Have contractors been contacted? Is there any negative feedback that you're getting from contractors in the area or builders?
Mayor Pro Tem, actually, the comments that we receive, especially from out-of-area contractors, is, we can't believe your fees are so low.
Okay, well, we need to know that, but we also have to justify it to our local citizenry. So, you know, anytime we do a rate increase, there needs to be a justification. And, you know, we do that. We do rate increases. We did one for garbage. We did, and all the time it has to be justified. So that's where we're at, I think, in this one. Yes, Councilor Brown.
It seems to me like if the rates haven't been adjusted since 2005, that's ample justification.
That's justification in
Yes.
itself, but I didn't know that until we just asked that in the conversation we had. Otherwise, we would have not known that was the existence. Yes, Councilman.
I applaud that flat fee concept on those two areas. I mean, that's a good idea and whatnot. I don't have a problem with that. It's just, you know, the ones that aren't marked here and not having any idea. And you just made the comment, outside area contractors think how low we are. I really like to know what inside area contractors think of the fees and whatnot, and 30% increase, what now, at this time, is that good, bad? Do they have a problem? But that's where I would like to see a little more information, and we'll take public comment tonight, I'm sure, Mr. Mayor, but you know, I'm for laying this over to another meeting for a vote, to give the public more time to have input, but just a thought.
Anyone else?
Nobody wants to pay more.
No, of course not,
But since 2005, this is the first I've heard of this, and that, like I say, that sounds like justification.
right.
Yeah, if we've gone this long, another 2 weeks isn't gonna hurt anything.
So you're recommending that we
table any action tonight?
Well, we'll need to allow tonight for any public comment
Oh,
at this
yes.
point, and then you can decide what you want to do following that public comment, if you're ready to adopt the resolution or
Move to Plan B or C.
Well, if there's.
Do we have any documentation that I need to read about public?
No, this is not a public hearing, just
Okay, this is
basically
just-
allow anyone to come and comment on the proposed fee increases.
Councilman Brown?
Well, it's been in the agenda, and I would assume that if somebody was really interested in public comment, they would have come to the meeting tonight, and if we could, I don't see any reason we can't make that available to anybody who'd like to speak.
Okay.
And that should, I don't know, that, it seems like it's ample. I mean, it's not like we had this a secret or something.
Great. I entertain anyone that would like to make public announcement or make a public disclosure. You're invited to do so now. Yes, Mrs. Hunt.
You'll have to sit with Steve.
I didn't get here in time for the presentation, so that was one question that I was going to
This is
present,
just on these fees.
just on the fees. Yes, and my first question was, how has the public been given opportunity to speak to the proposed change in fees as required by law on the agenda tonight? So, and we just found out new information. I'm so glad to hear you say it needs to be put off so that the public can have full information. Like, people have already left who might have been interested in that. And I was going to ask that you assure the citizens before the adoption by giving evidence that this condition has been met. So I really appreciate that from several people, and that's all I wanted to say, because I didn't look into it because I knew the public hadn't been given opportunity, so
Thank you.
that's all I wanted to say.
Anyone else would like to make public comment? All right, with that said, I think that we can entertain a motion to move forward. Correct?
The staff report outlines three possible options for the council. The staff's recommendation to adopt the resolution. If the council only wanted to approve certain fee increases, identify those, and we would prepare a revised fee schedule, or if you did not want to approve the fees, to provide us directions to what you want to do to proceed. Fourth option apparently could be to table, is that correct? Postpone.
Postpone, yes.
To another meeting to allow an opportunity, I guess, for some further consideration of possible further comment.
All right, everyone understands, yes.
I'd make a motion that we postpone the adoption or not of the proposal until the next public meeting to give citizens an opportunity to speak if they so wish. And that we have it near the beginning of the next meeting.
Also to give two more members a chance to.
We're also short two people, that's
Yeah.
true.
Councilman Brown.
I think our next agenda has an overabundance of things on it, doesn't it? No?
Well, we have a motion on the floor, and any discussion?
You have to have a second.
Oh, I have to have a second, yes? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Now we have a discussion. No discussion? All right, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor of accepting Rod Runyon's proposal to postpone this until a 2-week delay?
Well, till the next
Till the next-
available spot.
Till the next,
We'll let the city manager figure that out.
the next appropriate board or council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous.
You know, I would say, I've been through a lot of fee discussions over my career, and I would just say that, anytime we can give the public extra time to weigh in on something, that's good. Most fee increases are justified a number of different ways, but it doesn't hurt to have local contractors have a voice at the table.
Agreed. Any other business to come before this body? Without that, I adjourn this meeting.
All right.
I like these crinkly bags.
Oh, my God.